Good afternoon, and welcome to What Matters to Me and Why. I'm Vanessa Gomez-Gray, Associate Dean of Religious Life. And I'm so happy with this turnout because it feels good to see some familiar faces, as well as a lot of new faces out there in the audience. I know every time we have a different speaker, we always get new people here. So we've had an extraordinary semester. Beginning back in January, we had Glenn Fox here to start our series. He's with the Performance Science Institute, which is also a co-sponsor of this series this spring semester. Then in February, we heard from Lynn Swan, our USC's athletic director. And just last month, we heard from Gloria Kaufman, founder of the dance school. This series represents a creative solution to an important problem in the university setting: the separation of intellectual life from that of personal and spiritual issues. It offers the Trojan community an opportunity to hear from USC faculty, administrators, and trustees in a different way. Rather than lecturing on their particular area of expertise or research, we invite them to tell us about their life journey. So once a month, during this Wednesday lunch hour, we get to listen in as they reflect on their values, their beliefs, and motivations that have helped to shape their lives up till now. If you would like to nominate a member of the USC community to speak at a future event, please visit our website, orl.usc.edu. And additionally, you can visit our website to view the recordings of all our past speakers. So for the regulars here, you know that we partner with the Levin Institute for Humanities and Ethics at Dornsife to offer the What Matters to Me and Why program, as well as this semester, the Performance Science Institute, who, if you're on their mailing list, you would have been in on some great events like Ariana Huffington, Kobe Bryant, and others this semester. So if you're not on our mailing list, please do sign up at the table by the front door. You can also take a moment now to find us on social media. For Religious Life, it's USC Religious Life, and for Performance Science, it's at USC PSI, and that's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as well. All right, before we begin our main program, I just want to highlight a few upcoming events. Tomorrow, it's my birthday. And you are all invited to the University Religious Center to celebrate me. And but no joke, I talked them into buying us a ping pong table. And for anyone who grew up on Guam, which I did, you might know that I am an inter-island winner. I have the trophy to prove it. And so don't be threatened. Please just come out for a good time and challenge me to a game of ping pong. And every Thursday, you can just hang out with me and Dean Soni and Reverend Jim Burklow, as we always have chai time at 3 p.m. on Thursdays. So hope to see you tomorrow. On Friday, we're probably going to still play some ping pong, but it happens to be Better Together Day, and so we're going to be handing out free Indian burritos in the courtyard. So come out, have lunch with me from 12 to 2 o'clock, and we're just going to celebrate what it is to be together on this campus. Lastly, I want to invite all graduating students and their families to our Baccalaureate Ceremony. It's on Thursday, May 10th at 5 p.m. at Bovard. Doors open at 4:30, and I really wish I could tell you who our featured speaker is going to be. But USC has made me promise to keep it a secret just a while longer. Well, it's not Siddhartha Mukherjee, and it's not Oprah Winfrey. This person will definitely garner a lot of interest from our Trojan community. They may or may not be related to someone who is headlining at Coachella next week, but I can't say any more. Just wait for that announcement. But please attend if you can. The event is followed by a Baccalaureate Dinner, which is the biggest event, biggest meal USC hosts all year. And it's hosted by the Division of Student Affairs. And it's a wonderful way for you to have a formal meal on the eve of commencement with your family and with your friends. An elegant 3-course meal, white linens, live music, all these things. I've never been to this before. We didn't do this at Stanford, where I came from, so I'm really looking forward to having dinner with all our graduates and their family members, so please come out for that. You can get tickets online, and you better get them soon because from what I heard, we're usually at capacity, so you want to reserve your spot now. So, I'm so grateful to end this year's What Matters to Me and Why series with my colleague, Mary Ho. When I left Stanford this past August, a dear friend of mine in student affairs introduced me to Mary via email. So she ended up being one of the very first folks that got to welcome me to my new campus. And seeing as she's had a long history at USC, I appreciated her welcome and her insights in regards to my new campus. So at this time, I would like to introduce Savannah Robinson, who will share some thoughts on Mary Ho. Savannah is a junior, majoring in journalism at the Annenberg School of Communications, and she is also minoring in human rights and works in the dean's office at Dornsife. So please join me in welcoming Savannah to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Although I've only worked in the Office for Diversity and Strategic Initiatives for 2 years, I can already tell that it is incredibly rare to be able to work in such an empowering environment and to be able to have a boss that is as supportive and caring as Mary Ho. I started working in ODSI my sophomore year, and I was so nervous. I went to the first meeting prepared to just listen, sit back, and observe. But then Mary came in carrying a box of cupcakes. Instead of getting straight to business, we did a check-in, which is where we just talk about life and see how it's going on. And this is something that we still do in the office today, every week. The treats and the regular check-ins that we have are just a couple of the countless ways that Mary shows compassion for those around her. But I think the biggest reflection of Mary's character is the work that she does in ODSI. ODSI primarily focuses on supporting underrepresented and underserved students at USC. These goals aren't met just through our programs like the food pantry or the First Gen Summit that we host every year, but through the individual care that Mary provides to each student. I know that Mary always says that the work that we do in ODSI is a team effort, but I can't imagine the amount of energy that she puts into each program, each committee, each event that we plan. In the almost 2 years that I've been working in ODSI, Mary has gone beyond what I believe anybody in her position has done by running over hurdles that are so big and by successfully starting new programs like the Emergency Food Pantry, which is USC's first initiative tackling food insecurity. These programs make marginalized students at this school feel like they're being cared for and like they have a community, which is something that is so rare and transforms their experience. Mary, I really appreciate everything that you do. I know that you're backstage right now, but I am so proud to be your colleague and to be able to work with you in ODSI. I look forward to learning even more about you today. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome my boss and ODSI's Assistant Dean, Mary Ho.
Thank you, Sabby, for the introduction. I didn't have a chance to, and I didn't want to hear the introduction before I came on. And I have to say that I'm just very touched by what you shared. And Sabby is just an amazing individual in the office. What she's been able to do in those 2 years to give visibility to ODSI is pretty amazing. And she's just a stellar student as well. And also, I just want to say that our staff right now, they have been, and I say this all the time, they are the core of what we do. They are our team. They give me their feedback, and they work so hard for the university. And they're here today. Also, thank you, Vanessa, for inviting me. I will be at your birthday tomorrow for sure, and I will make sure to play ping pong with you as well. Also, I want to just thank the Cultural Center staff, directors. Oh my gosh, it's so great to see them. I was like, oh, you found me here. I miss them very much, just our collaboration and our honesty and just how we do our work, the transparency, and we're at the ground level. we are at the ground level when I was in student affairs, and I know just how difficult it is with the work that they do. So I'm just so happy I saw them walk in. I'm like, oh yay, they're here. It was a surprise. Not to say that I was like, all right, I'm just happy to see you all. That's all. So with that, I was selected and nominated to do a talk on what matters to me and why. I received the email from Vanessa in the fall of last year, and she's like, oh, you've been nominated to do this talk. I'm like, me? Okay, that's great. I was so honored that they wanted to give me this opportunity to share a bit about myself and to talk about what matters to me and why. I was actually invited 8 years ago at Santa Clara University when I worked there as the program director for the Office for Multicultural Learning, to do this very talk. And I remember that I was preparing and I did a talk and I talked about my journey in student affairs and diversity education. I kind of walked them through this like life journey of reflection, and I have to say that I think some of them fell asleep. Not to say it was boring in any way, or not interesting, but I feel that, having an opportunity to reflect on it again is kind of different for me, right? Because I'm a very different person than who I am 8 years ago. I've learned so much along the way, and when you talk about what matters to me and why, it really requires some deep reflection. And with that, I kind of sat and thought about it. Vanessa emailed me last fall, but it has to come to you. It really does have to come to you. And I've started collecting different stories along the way as I wanted to kind of tell the story of who I am. And I have to say that the last 3 years, the last few years, I've been really practicing reflection on a weekly, daily basis. I found that it's been very important in my life, in this point in my life, especially since I started working at USC. I had a mentor who really inspired me to think about what it means to do this type of work, but also to reflect deeply as a daily practice. And that daily practice keeps me sane. It keeps me connected to my work. It keeps me connected to my family, and it keeps me connected to the students that I serve. So with this talk, I really dug deep and really thought about all the students that I have met along the way. They are the core of who I am and why I wanted to go in student affairs. And also I thought about the staff who have definitely inspired me, and the faculty mentors that I have no doubt relied on during very tough times. So with that, just a little bit about myself. So I grew up in Alhambra, California, which is not too far from here. It's about 30 minutes east. I grew up in an ethnic enclave. It was at that time largely Asian American community, but also there was a significant population of Mexican Americans as well. And for us, that was a community where I found my identity, right? So at that time, I think I shared this story, boba wasn't as popular. I think I went to the OG boba place, and I'm very proud of that. They actually made everything by hand, no machines, and I was like, wow, this is great. I found my Asian American identity and my Chinese American identity through a set of friends that I became very close with. Alhambra High School is, I wouldn't say it's diverse, but it's diverse in ethnicity. So that we share the Asian American umbrella, but for us it's really understanding our ethnic background and who we are. I'm 1.5 generation. That means that I came to the United States before 10. I'm born in Vietnam, but I identify as Chinese. That is the core of my identity, and my family and my parents have really set the groundwork for me to be proud of who I am. So grew up in Alhambra, California. We hung out as a community, and we really found a sense of what it meant to be Asian in the United States. We try to figure out when and how to step outside of our comfort zone, but we're very much protected in the ethnic enclave of Alhambra, California. And my parents, they're still there. they never left. They are still there, and they have found their community, and they're not going anywhere. They love it. They're familiar with the culture, the language. They have a support system. And with that, Alhambra, California is very much a part of who I am because of the people I have met and the community that I have grew up with. So I went to and graduated from UC Irvine, first generation college student. I had a difficult time at first. I didn't know how to navigate the university setting. I decided to get involved, probably my last 2 years. I was involved in the Chinese Student Association, which is also a way for me to really learn about who I am. I was involved in the Asian Pacific American Student Union, and definitely an orientation leader. So the orientation leader in me never goes away. And from there, I found my love of student support and student affairs. I met amazing mentors when I was a student the last 2 years, and they inspired me to go into student affairs. And the reason why they inspired me was not because of their research, not because of how well they ran a program, it's because of how they served the students. There was a way in there was a way in how they talked to students, in how they were present with students, and that inspired me to go into this field. Originally, I thought I was going to be a lawyer, but that didn't go far, and I found that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I found my calling. So with that, I received my master's degree from New York University in Higher Education Administration and a doctorate degree in educational leadership from the University of Southern California more recently, so the last year. It was quite a journey for me to receive my doctorate degree. I'm the first in the family to receive a master's degree, and the first in the family to receive a doctorate degree, and I'm the only one in the family to receive a doctorate degree. So that's an identity that I'm very, very much proud of. So the question of what matters to me and why is a very big question. So I mentioned the last few years, reflection is a big part of my practice. I journal quite often. I buy journal pads every time I get a chance wherever I travel. And it's helped me think more deeply about my work and my life. So many things matter to me, right? My family, my partner, my nephews, my friends, equity, social justice. The list is fairly long. But if I have to talk about 4 things that matter to me, I want to share 4 stories that matter to me and the people that are connected to the stories. They have transformed me and my life and my work. The first story focuses on transformative teaching, and it involves one of my professors at New York University. What she helped me understand was college student activism. She taught me how to educate and empower students to dismantle systemic oppression. And the course was focused on college student involvement, identity, and community. So what she did was she chose a book that was centered on liberation, and she used that theoretical framework to teach us about college students. She introduced us to a book. Who's familiar with the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire? He's amazing, right? He's absolutely amazing. And I will say that this is the first time where I truly understood how the oppressed will stay oppressed and how the oppressors maintain power. It opened my worldview like I wouldn't believe. At UC Irvine, I didn't even go near that type of reading. We talked about Asian American identity when I took a course, but that book blew me away. And the fact that Professor Stage chose that book to talk about student involvement more generally, but through a liberation framework, was very amazing and very eye-opening. So Professor Stage she talked about how the marginalized and the oppressed stay oppressed, and how we can actually co-create knowledge through lived experience and critical thinking. So this co-creation of knowledge can help liberate the oppressed and educate teachers and the learners in the process. I'm not well-versed in Paulo Freire, but I was definitely inspired by his theories and philosophy. However, it wasn't only about the book that changed my worldview and Paulo Freire. It was about Professor Stage. Professor Stage is not dynamic, charismatic. Good thing she's not here today, because it sounds pretty bad. She's none of that. You know, how she taught the course was, she was very authentic. She really listened to the students and set up a stage for us to create a space to co-create knowledge. The same way the book asked the oppressed and oppressors to co-create knowledge. She had us engage in dialogue. She had us reflect. Reflect was the other thing. And she had us really talk about what it was like when we were undergraduate students at our respective universities. So every day, there's daily practice of conversation, dialogue. How does this link to the theoretical framework of liberation? As we were co-creating knowledge for ourselves, I was inspired to do my research paper on pedagogy of the oppressed, but through the framework of liberation for Asian American students through Asian American activism. I worked on the research, and I was very much inspired by some of the students I met at UC Irvine and what they did and how they became student activists and how they essentially educated the university about Prop 209 and other types of oppressive policies. So with that, after the end of the course, Professor Stage asked if I was interested in submitting my paper for a journal article, and I said absolutely. We worked on it back and forth, and however, we lost touch. We submitted, and they asked for major revisions, and we never followed through on that, unfortunately. But I still have this paper, and it still is something that I hold near and dear to me, because it really does have me remember more deeply about the course and also Professor Stage. The one thing I do want to share about Professor Stage is I did not talk to her for 10 years. We lost touch. We lost touch. Basically, I found her on the website, and I thought of shooting her an email, and I never got a chance to. 10 years later, when I applied for my doctorate program at USC, I emailed Professor Stage, and I asked her to write my faculty a letter of recommendation. So this is 10 years later. I haven't talked to her, emailed her during those 10 years. And she responded right away. She said, absolutely. She wrote the letter, she emailed me, she sent it off, and she emailed me a copy. I was like, wow, she emailed me a copy. I can actually read this. I know what she wrote. I want to see what she wrote about me. She emailed me a copy, and I read it. And I was deeply touched by what she wrote. 10 years later, she remembered everything about what we did together in the class. She remembered our research. She remembered me as a student and as a person. And I was blown away. She probably, during her 20 years of teaching, she has met many students along the way. But the fact that she remembered me that deeply was something that was transformative for me. Because I realized the reason why she remembered me was because she allowed us to co-create knowledge in that course. She was not only our teacher, but we were also her teacher. So essentially, she created that transformative education for herself as well. And I thought about what it means to be a transformative teacher, and it really comes in different shapes and form. It can be individualized. It doesn't have to be a formal space. And I believe that we all have the capacity to take on that role in higher education. So that's one story, and that's one moment that had a deep meaning for me. The second story is focused on giving voice. I'm very lucky to be in this field. I've met a lot of amazing students along the way. They have empowered me, I have empowered them, and they have really taught me life lessons. There's one student I want to talk about, and I'll call him John. And John, I met John when I was Associate Director for the Center for Multicultural Learning at Santa Clara University. He was an active student leader, and he was a member of the Multicultural Center. He identifies as Mexican American and is an undocumented student. He has a clear sense of his identity, a clear sense of community. He has conviction, and he is passionate about elevating the voice of the undocumented community. When I met him, his passion for justice was pretty clear. He immersed himself in policy issues around the DREAM Act and policies that were specific to the undocumented community. He was a very active student leader. In February 2007, an off-campus party, racist-themed party, called South of the Border was thrown by a group of students. The party had students dressed up as custodial staff, gangsters, and housekeepers. And I don't need to go on painting this horrific racist stereotypes of the Chicanx and Latinx community that was on full display at the party. Pictures from this party moved pretty fast through Facebook, and John decided to share, and he knew he needed to share the pictures with administrators, staff, and faculty. The racist theme party caused psychological, emotional harm on the community. The theme party also caused emotional distress on the campus as a whole. The campus community was forced to reflect on what it means to be a Jesuit institution and the mission of social justice. At the moment of turmoil and crisis, the university does their best to respond. They have and decided to put out a statement to condemn the students, and they also throw an open hall forum for students to really reflect on the hurt that they were feeling. Administration was called out for not doing enough on campus climate for students of color in this predominantly white institution. However, it took the effort of John and a group of students to transform the university. They created a video called Better Than That, which gave the full human stories behind some of the racist images that came out of the party. The video showed the diversity that existed in the Chicana X and Latinx community. The video also includes stories of the custodial staff who worked at Santa Clara University, and they shared their stories of why they're there and why they want to work hard for their families to give them access to education. This video gave voice to this invisible staff who wake up early in the morning and work all day to maintain the universities and corporations across the nation. Their powerful voices and the moving stories transformed the community. John and the students who helped to create this video shared the brave stories and lived out the true mission of Santa Clara University. John continued to be an advocate for the undocumented community and also for dreamers. And he did a lot of research, and whenever he had the chance, he was there to make sure that the university was held accountable for campus climate issues. He was such an asset to the university, and I want to share that student activism is an asset to the university. Change starts at the grassroots level, and without student voice expressing these concerns, it's really hard for administration to pick up the pieces and just move along with them. And I value student activism, and I think that administrators need to be okay with letting students voice their concerns and addressing these types of concerns accordingly. And John has inspired me in a lot of ways. I had a chance to reconnect with him when I first started my position in Asian Pacific American Student Services. I have two more stories. Hold on tight. Looks like you're all still awake, so that's a good thing. The third story I want to share is about agency. So what is agency? Agency is having the capacity to act upon something. Agency is having the power to help others who do not have agency. Agency is being aware of your own capacity and power to create change. And why does that matter to me? It matters to me because I have benefited from someone who has been an agent for me. And I have also been an agent for students as well. So when I first started in the field of student affairs, I walked right into the old boys club, where white male privilege was prevalent. We were a staff of 5, 2 males and 3 females. I was the only person of color. There was a system embedded where white male dominance was pretty much part of the daily decision-making and structure of the college. The person who was my supervisor benefited from this system. He has been with the college for a long time and was unaware of his privilege. Being a new hire, I was unsure of how to navigate this entrenched system of privilege. The 3 male staff in the office relied on each other for support. Since we were all direct reports, we were also very much fearful of voicing our concerns loudly. What we did was we built relationships with key faculty and staff who had agency to address some of these issues regarding pay equity and campus climate for female staff. Ties slowly began to churn, but not fast enough. And soon we began to realize our own agency and how we can create change in the workplace and also at the college. It was a very empowering experience for us, and we continued to build allyship with faculty and staff who became our agency, and in turn, we became agents for students. I'm well aware of my agency in various positions that I've held. I have used my agency to assist underserved students, get access to resources. I have used my agency to create programs to address issues of diversity and inclusion, and I believe we all have agency, and we should be aware of how we can create change for those who don't. And this story still remains with me. I recently reconnected with a staff at a conference, and we were able to talk about that situation and where we're at now and how we've been able to really advocate for students in ways that we have capacity to do so. The last story. So the last thing I want to touch on is community. So being a part of a community is feeling a sense of belonging. Community matters to me because I have seen the formation of community play out in different contexts in my life. I have found community in my work, with my peers, and in my personal life. They have been great support systems for me. And I've mentioned that my parents, they found community in Alhambra, California. I want to delve into a story about community and how a group of students came together to serve another community. And in the process, they learned from each other, and they were able to form their own community. So St. Mary's College celebrates Martin Luther King Day as a day of service. It's not mandatory for us to do service, but it's highly encouraged. And programs are put in place to facilitate this process. One year, I took a group of students to St. Anthony's Homeless Shelter to serve those in need and the homeless. St. Anthony's is an amazing nonprofit organization whose focus is to lift and give dignity to the homeless community in San Francisco. The group of students I brought were racially and ethnically diverse, and many of them did not know each other. Their shared identity was being a student at St. Mary's College. However, they weren't in community with each other yet. They knew each other, but not too well. They just knew that they were students at St. Mary's. All the students who participate in this day of service have never been to a homeless shelter and never had to deal with housing and food insecurity. We got to the campus, drove a van. So student affairs is probably the most unrated profession ever. We can pretty much do anything. We can drive a campus van that seats about 24 people. We can plan a program on a budget of $1,000. We can throw out an icebreaker in a matter of minutes. I have to say student affairs is a very underrated profession. But I drove a van with the students to St. Anthony's. We arrived 45 minutes later, and we were greeted by staff. The staff went through the history of the organization and gave us background information on the individuals and families who will be coming through St. Anthony's. We learned how to prep the food, and they talked about what the day would look like. So we were ready to roll. We had our aprons on, and the line started forming, and we saw the diversity of folks that were coming through the door. We saw families, we saw the young, we saw the elders, we saw people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. The students greeted and fed them. And after we were done with that, we all sat down and chatted with the folks that came through. And they shared their stories. They shared their stories of why they're homeless, why they're in need. And the students that I brought learned about the economic disparity that exists in the U.S., and at any one moment, anyone can become homeless due to these circumstances that they face. And they were able to connect to the people in a very deep way. So the people that went through St. Anthony's, they said they're very happy that they have a space like this for them, and that it gave them a sense of dignity. So we got back to St. Mary's College and reflected on our journey, and the students were very touched. And in turn, they were able to form a community within a community. So we met regularly, we chatted, and we got lunch together, and they all know each other now, right? They had this shared experience, this shared story, and essentially now they feel a part of St. Mary's College in a different way. So with that, community matters to me because I've been lucky enough to form some amazing communities that I feel if I didn't have them here at, whether it's USC or in other universities, then it would have been really difficult for me to actually do the work that I do. So with that, I shared 4 stories and 4 things that mattered to me and why. Transformative teaching, giving voice, using agency and community. These are the things that have shaped who I am and how I serve students. Thank you.
Hello. With our last 5 or so minutes, we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and my colleague here will run the mic over to you.
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm a freshman here at USC. Sorry about that. And I'm a resident assistant for next year. So I was kind of wondering, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, and how do you suggest I facilitate these difficult conversations about not just tolerance of diversity, but actually celebrating diversity among my residents?
I would definitely say that I think it's great that you care and want to engage in conversations about these types of issues. I would say that you should utilize the resources and the staff who can help to partner with you to facilitate these conversations, because they can get pretty deep and heavy. I would also contact your resident director and the senior staff to say you're interested in this, and make it a pretty common programming in residential education, because we do have a lot of these types of programs, but if we don't make it a common practice to have it, sometimes they disappear. But I would say utilize the resources that exist and work with the cultural centers, myself, or other staff that can really help students to think through some of these things.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I work with Mary. My name is Natalie Reyes, and I wanted to just put the question out there that as I look around the room, I see people from very different departments, backgrounds, identities, and what message would you give us on how to continue building community once we step out of this room?
How do you, to build community with students outside of
with
this room?
each other, or in continued dialoguing in these important issues?
I think two things, right? So as a university, we have the responsibility to help create this space for students to be able to build community. So it is a responsibility of the university as well. But as students, we need to be open-minded and actually take advantage of these, the programs and the services and spaces that allow students to come together and really get to know each other. But it really does have to be also a university accountability, and there are a lot of ways that USC they definitely have created a lot of these spaces to help students build that. But just talk to someone, step outside of your comfort zone. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and I think that we need to all learn to be uncomfortable because that's how we actually grow.
Thank you.
I was so glad to hear that boba also played a part in your Asian identity because that's all college was for me, and I'm glad that tradition continues here at USC. But what I found interesting was, first of all, to hear that you were on the track to law school, it sounded like. And I'm just curious because my own parents had a vision for me. They're still not quite sure what I do here at USC, and so I try to sort of actualize that for them and explain what my day-to-day life looks like. But what was that like for you, navigating from seeing yourself or maybe your family seeing you as a lawyer to then taking a bold step towards student affairs and higher education?
Oh, they still think I'm a lawyer. Just kidding. I'm kidding. No, they know. They see my paycheck. They know I'm not a lawyer. But well, they don't know what I do. I mean, I say that honestly because they've never been, they've never been a student in the U.S., right? So they don't know what that looks like. But what they do know is that I work at USC. They love USC, number one. But also they know that I help students. So they know that I help students in the most basic way, right, with their academics, with making sure that they're supported at the university. They weren't disappointed when I told them that I wasn't going to law school. They were very, very supportive because I think they were just proud that I received my BA and I wanted to pursue a master's. So they were proud that I wanted to further my education. Yeah.
Hey, Mary.
Hi, Billy.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you for being with us today. So many great things you said. I think that really touched on a lot of important things, especially here at university and college. And for me, definitely saying that student activism is an asset at a university and college. I really appreciate that. But what I wanted to ask you is, as someone who I've known for a while and as a colleague, and we were cultural center directors in the good fight, but you did something special. You crossed over to the academic side of the house. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on how the academic side of the house, student affairs, other colleagues, and of course students, how we can work more together, and where is the value and where are opportunities for us to do more things as we work in community, as you were saying at USA.
That's a good question. I'm in Dornsife College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, but I work closely with student affairs and with the cultural centers because that's my background. And I see the value in working with student affairs because they're at the ground level with students. So I come from that background, and I completely understand that. I would say that partnering with the academic side really has to start at the grassroots with building relationships with staff and faculty who care about student support and programs. And I think that that's the approach that has worked. Administrators, not that they don't necessarily care about working with student affairs, but they have also very specific goals that they're trying to manage on the academic side. But with that, there are staff who really do want to work with student affairs. So it's building those relationships and making those types of connections, and also sharing what you all do, because what you all do are so important, and I don't think that some folks know how important the cultural centers are in that way and how well connected you are to students.
I would just like to close this off by thanking Mary so much for sharing her experiences and her knowledge with us. And I'd like to present you with this journal, which is actually perfect, so that you can just write down and record more of what matters to you.
Oh, thank you.
I know.